At my sister's party, she called me useless. Everyone laughed, then her boss walked in. "Hi, boss." I froze, feeling the laughter echo in my ears. My sister, Tessa, stood there with that smug smile, completely enjoying my embarrassment. The room was filled with people I barely knew, friends, relatives, and neighbors, all staring at me as if I had just done something ridiculous. I tried to smile, but it felt fake. Tessa had always loved showing off, making herself look perfect while putting me down. And tonight was no different. She made a joke about how I never achieved anything significant, how I was always in the background, and the crowd laughed like I wasn't even human. I felt my cheeks burn, my stomach twisting. It wasn't the first time she humiliated me, but somehow it hurt even more in front of so many strangers. Then the door opened, and in walked Mr. Lionel Hawthorne, Tessa's boss. I recognized him instantly from the charity project I had volunteered for last year. He had complimented my dedication back then, and seeing him now made my humiliation twist into something sharper, like a chance I had never expected. Tessa didn't even notice his entrance. She was too busy smirking at me. I clenched my hands at my sides, my mind racing. How had she not realized that the world might see me differently than she did? She always assumed I was weak, useless, and invisible. But Mr. Hawthorne's eyes lingered on me for a moment, and I could feel something shift in the air. I wasn't just the sister who got ignored or mocked anymore. The laughter finally died down when someone brought out the cake, but I could still feel the sting of every word Tessa had thrown at me. I had always been careful, keeping my thoughts to myself, but the anger and humiliation bubbled inside me now, mixing with a strange spark of opportunity. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was the beginning. I moved quietly to a corner, observing the guests and how easily Tessa charmed them. She didn't see me as a threat, and that might be exactly what I needed. I thought about the charity project, the times I had worked hard without recognition, and the unfairness of being dismissed as worthless. That feeling of being overlooked, combined with Mr. Hawthorne's presence, gave me a strange sense of hope. I realized that my humiliation tonight could be turned into something powerful. Tessa had always underestimated me, and now, for the first time, I could see a way to step out of her shadow. The anger in me wasn't just pain anymore. It was fuel. Something told me that things could change, and maybe, just maybe, she would be the one feeling small in the end. I stayed quiet, letting the party continue around me, but inside a plan was forming. A careful, quiet, unstoppable plan. Tessa might have laughed tonight, but I would make sure that this was only the start of my story. I remembered what it was like growing up with Tessa. She was always in the spotlight, effortlessly charming everyone around her, while I stayed in the background, making sure things ran smoothly. I kept my head down, helped with chores, did my homework on time, and tried to be responsible. But no matter what I did, it never seemed to matter. Tessa got the praise, the attention, and the admiration. One memory hit me harder than the rest. We were kids, playing near the lake when she slipped on the wet rocks and almost fell in. I grabbed her just in time, saving her from a serious accident. I thought the family would be proud of me for acting quickly, but no. Tessa told the story her way, making it sound like she had handled it herself. Everyone clapped for her bravery, and I forced a smile while my chest ached with frustration. That was when I first realized that being responsible and careful didn't always mean recognition. Over the years, the little annoyances built up into something heavier. The constant feeling of being invisible, of never being enough, started to weigh on me. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that my worth didn't depend on anyone else noticing me. But deep down, the quiet resentment grew. I had learned to hold it in, to act polite and composed, while a part of me planned ways to finally be seen for who I was. Tonight, at Tessa's party, that old feeling came rushing back, but it was mixed with something new. Mr. Hawthorne's presence added an unexpected twist. Despite the embarrassment, I found myself standing tall, keeping my calm while Tessa laughed at me. I could feel him watching, and it was different from the way others looked at me. His eyes seemed to notice my composure, my quiet confidence hidden beneath the humiliation. For the first time, I felt that someone might actually see my potential, not just my sister's shadow. I realized that all the years of feeling overlooked hadn't made me weak. They had prepared me. I had learned patience, observation, and the value of keeping my dignity even when others tried to tear me down. Tessa didn't see it, of course, but Mr. Hawthorne did. And that made a small spark light inside me, a spark that whispered I wasn't powerless after all. As I watched Tessa charm the guests, laughing and making herself the center of attention, I felt something shift. The anger and the old resentment didn't weigh me down. Instead, they sharpened my mind. I was beginning to see that the years of being ignored weren't wasted. They had taught me how to stay calm under pressure, how to wait for the right moment, and how to turn a situation to my advantage. For the first time, I felt a strange mix of relief and determination. I wasn't just the quiet sister anymore. I had learned how to hold myself together, even in front of people who thought I was nothing. And maybe, just maybe, tonight would be the night everything started to change. As I stood there, I watched Tessa laugh and flirt with her guests, completely unaware of how careless she could be. She was always proud, always certain that everything would go her way, and tonight proved it again. That arrogance, I realized, could be used. I didn't want to yell at her or make a scene. Public confrontations never worked in my favor. Instead, I decided to be smart, quiet, and careful. I would find a way to reclaim my dignity without anyone noticing until it was too late. I began moving through the party more deliberately, looking for opportunities to speak with people who mattered. That's when I spotted Mr. Hawthorne again. I didn't rush over or make it obvious. I found a reason to be near him, asking small questions about work and the charity projects I had helped with before. He seemed to notice me, listening carefully when I spoke, asking questions about my experience. I stayed calm, friendly, and polite, making sure he saw me as capable without seeming like I was trying too hard. While talking to him, I learned something important. Tessa's company was having problems with a big project, one that could decide the future of her career. Mr. Hawthorne was looking for someone trustworthy and skilled to take over parts of it. He hadn't chosen anyone yet, and he seemed frustrated with the lack of reliable people. My heart skipped a beat. This was more than chance, it was an opening. I didn't let Tessa know I had discovered this. She was too distracted, too sure that she was in control. But inside, I started forming a plan. I could help with the project, show competence, and slowly prove that I was more capable than she ever imagined. I would stay quiet, let her continue to boast and make mistakes, and then quietly step in when it mattered most. I knew that subtlety was my best weapon. As I moved away from Mr. Hawthorne, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. It wasn't revenge in a dramatic, obvious way. It was smarter than that. I would earn recognition, reclaim my place, and finally show that I was not useless. And I would do it while Tessa kept thinking she was untouchable. Watching her from across the room, I felt a strange satisfaction. Her arrogance was my advantage, and patience would be my ally. I didn't need to confront her or embarrass her in front of the crowd. The game had already begun, and I had the first move. This was my chance to turn humiliation into opportunity, and I intended to take it carefully, step by step, without anyone realizing it, including Tessa. I decided to make my first move carefully. I told Tessa I wanted to help with her project, saying it was because I wanted to support her as her sister. She looked at me with that smug expression and laughed, calling me incompetent again, just like she always did. She didn't think I could do anything useful, and that made it even easier for me to hide my real intentions. I nodded, smiling politely, acting obedient and harmless while inside I was already thinking about my plan. Once I was allowed to be near the project, I started paying close attention. I watched Tessa closely, noticing things nobody else seemed to see. She was careless with details, often forgetting small but important steps. She relied on others too much and ignored problems until they became bigger. It was frustrating to see, but also gave me an idea of where I could quietly step in and make a difference. I began collecting little bits of information, like how certain reports were incomplete or how she overlooked mistakes in her calculations. I also observed her meetings with the team. She often interrupted others and dismissed their suggestions, showing how little she really understood the work. Everyone else seemed too nervous or too impressed by her confidence to notice, but I kept track of everything. While I gathered information, I had to be careful not to show that I was paying so much attention. I acted as if I was just trying to learn, pretending to follow her instructions exactly. Inside, I was planning quietly, thinking about how to use each mistake to show that I could do things better. The harder Tessa tried to prove she was in control, the easier it became for me to see her weaknesses. It wasn't easy. I had to keep smiling, acting calm and loyal, even when I felt frustrated or angry. Every laugh she directed at me stung, but I reminded myself that this was part of the plan. I couldn't let anyone, especially Tessa, see what I was thinking. The tension built inside me, a mixture of nervousness, excitement, and determination. Every step had to be careful, every word measured. As I worked quietly, I realized I was learning more than just the project. I was learning patience, strategy, and how to use people's assumptions against them. Tessa thought I was weak, but secretly, I was already preparing the moves that would eventually put me ahead. I wasn't just helping her. I was observing, planning, and positioning myself for the moment when I could finally show that I was capable, smart, and deserving of recognition. Even as I laughed along with Tessa's jokes and nodded at her instructions, I felt a sense of control I had never had before. I was pretending to be harmless, but inside, I was carefully building the foundation for the moment when everything would change, and Tessa wouldn't see it coming. As the days went by, I started doing more than just helping Tessa. I quietly made small improvements to the project, fixing mistakes she didn't notice and handling tasks faster than anyone expected. I never made a big deal about it. I didn't want her to see me as a threat. It felt like walking on a tightrope, but each time I completed a task well, I gained a little more confidence in myself. One day, I realized something important. Tessa had been telling Mr. Hawthorne that everything was going perfectly, but I could see the truth. Parts of the project were behind schedule, and she had ignored problems that could cause bigger issues later. I knew I needed proof if I wanted to do something about it. I started writing down the mistakes she made, saving emails, and keeping records of the work that hadn't been done. I had to be careful so she wouldn't suspect anything. At the same time, I noticed how some of the other people on the team looked frustrated with Tessa. She often ignored their suggestions or took credit for their ideas, and it was obvious that some of them were quietly upset. I began talking to them more, asking their opinions and listening carefully. I didn't reveal my plan, but I let them know that I was reliable and careful. Slowly, I gained their trust, and they started sharing more information about what was really happening in the project. I could feel myself building leverage without anyone noticing. Tessa was still focused on her image, proud and careless, while I quietly prepared for the moment when I could step in. I learned how to solve problems quickly, how to keep track of important details, and how to be patient. It was like I was assembling a puzzle piece by piece, getting ready for the right moment. Even though I acted calm and helpful, inside I was thinking ahead. Every mistake Tessa made, every lie she told about the project, was something I could use later. I didn't want revenge to be obvious or mean-spirited. I wanted it to be smart, fair, and undeniable. The more I observed, the more I saw how her arrogance was creating opportunities for me. The quiet satisfaction of knowing I was slowly gaining an advantage kept me going. I wasn't just watching and documenting. I was learning how to work better than her, how to think ahead, and how to make others notice my abilities without her realizing it. I felt stronger with each small success, and the plan inside my mind became clearer. By the time Tessa noticed that I was doing things efficiently and handling problems she had ignored, I was already several steps ahead. I had proof of her mistakes, allies who trusted me, and a calm confidence that made it clear I could handle much more than anyone realized. The project was slowly becoming mine to guide, and I was ready for the moment when all of my careful planning would finally show its results. The day of the small work meeting, Tessa found another way to humiliate me. She made a joke in front of the team about how I was useless and incapable of handling important tasks. A few coworkers laughed politely, not knowing what to say, and I felt my stomach tighten. The words stung, and for a moment, I wanted to run out of the room and cry. But I forced myself to stay calm, taking a deep breath and keeping my expression neutral. I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. As I sat there, I couldn't help but think about all the times she had made me feel small, throughout school, at family events, and now at work. The pain of being overlooked, ignored, and mocked had been with me for years. It had shaped me, taught me patience, and made me stronger in ways she would never understand. That memory of helplessness transformed into something else now, a determination I couldn't ignore. Instead of letting the embarrassment destroy me, I decided to let it fuel me. Every cruel word she said, every laugh at my expense, would become motivation. While Tessa continued speaking, boasting about herself and acting superior, I began to imagine a future moment in which the roles would be reversed. I pictured her being exposed, not in a harsh or mean way, but with grace and clarity, so everyone could see her mistakes and arrogance. I could see the satisfaction of standing quietly as the truth came to light, letting her ego crumble naturally. I realized that revenge didn't need to be loud or dramatic. It just needed to be undeniable. In that moment, I also reflected on myself, on the years of feeling second best, of working hard without recognition, and of watching Tessa get credit for everything. The memories were painful, but they reminded me of my worth. I had skills, intelligence, and a strong work ethic that no one had ever acknowledged fully. The anger I felt was not just for the insult today, but for all the times my efforts had been ignored, all the times my voice had been silenced. That deep-seated pain had been buried for years, but now it gave me purpose. I left the meeting with my head held high, my heart pounding, but my mind clear. I would continue working quietly, observing, and preparing. I would let Tessa's arrogance guide her mistakes, and I would be ready when the right moment came. The humiliation no longer felt like a setback. It felt like a turning point. I realized that patience and strategy could be stronger than anger alone. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control of my story. The tears I had suppressed became fuel for focus, and the pain I had carried for years became clarity. Tessa could mock me all she wanted, but I knew something she didn't. I was ready, and soon, the truth would be seen by everyone, quietly but completely. I decided it was time to act, but I had to be careful. I started sharing small pieces of information about Tessa's mistakes with Mr. Hawthorne. I didn't make it obvious that I was pointing out her flaws. I presented it as observations, quietly showing what was really going on. I included examples of deadlines being missed, errors in reports, and exaggerations about progress. I made sure everything was accurate, so there was no way it could backfire on me. At the same time, I made sure to show Mr. Hawthorne that I could handle the problems. I didn't boast or criticize Tessa directly. Instead, I calmly suggested ways to fix issues, offering solutions that were simple but effective. I completed tasks ahead of schedule, double-checked details, and kept communication clear. Slowly, Mr. Hawthorne began noticing that I was reliable and competent. He asked me to take on more responsibilities and even let me lead small parts of the project. Tessa didn't see what was happening at first. She was still confident, still thinking that everything would go her way because of her charm and her position. She laughed at small mistakes I made while working, assuming they didn't matter. But every time she dismissed me, I quietly fixed the problems she ignored, keeping track of the results. My actions were subtle, invisible to most people, but they built trust with Mr. Hawthorne. As my influence grew, I noticed Tessa starting to pay attention. She would watch me during meetings, trying to see what I was doing, but she underestimated me. She thought I was just being careful or lucky, not realizing that I had been planning and working strategically for weeks. I let her think she was still ahead while I slowly took control of the project's progress. The feeling of having that hidden power was strange but satisfying. I could watch her make careless mistakes while I quietly corrected them and made solutions appear effortless. Mr. Hawthorne began asking for my input first, often ignoring Tessa's suggestions, and I could see the surprise in Tessa's eyes when he acted this way. She had never expected me to have this much influence, and she still didn't understand that it wasn't luck, it was careful planning and patience. I continued working this way, always calm, always professional, and always one step ahead. I didn't let my anger show, and I didn't boast about my work. Every completed task, every solution I offered, added to my credibility and slowly shifted the balance of power. Tessa was still arrogant, but I could see cracks forming in her confidence. By quietly executing my plan, I was finally in a position to show that I wasn't useless, that I could lead and succeed. Tessa thought she could control everything, but I was already changing the story from behind the scenes, and soon, everyone would see the truth. I finally decided it was time to confront Tessa, but I knew I had to do it carefully. I didn't want to yell or start an argument. I asked her to meet me in a quiet part of the office, where no one else could hear. She smirked at first, thinking I was going to apologize for being useless again, but that wasn't my plan. I stayed calm, my voice steady, even as my heart pounded. I started by pointing out the mistakes she had made on the project, the times she had exaggerated progress, and the small errors that had caused problems for the team. I didn't shout or make it dramatic. I simply stated the facts. Then I reminded her of the work I had done quietly, the ways I had fixed things she ignored, and how I had helped keep the project on track without needing attention. I could see her expression change slightly, a flicker of surprise passing over her face. I went further, talking about the years of favoritism I had seen growing up, the times she took credit for things I had done, and how her arrogance had made others believe she was better than she actually was. I didn't cry, and I didn't raise my voice. I just spoke clearly and calmly, letting every word land with precision. Each fact, each example, built a quiet weight that even Tessa couldn't ignore. At first, she tried to laugh it off, pretending I was overreacting. But as I continued, her confidence began to falter. I could see the panic growing in her eyes as she realized that I had noticed everything, that I had been keeping track quietly while she assumed she was untouchable. She had underestimated me for so long, and now the truth was laid out before her, simple and undeniable. The confrontation wasn't about revenge in a dramatic sense. It was about clarity. I didn't need to yell or embarrass her in front of others. The facts spoke for themselves. My calm demeanor, the way I held myself while explaining everything, made it impossible for her to respond aggressively. She tried to defend herself, but I could see she had no words that would actually counter the evidence I presented. By the time I finished, Tessa looked small and uncertain, the arrogant mask she always wore slipping just enough to reveal the panic underneath. I felt a strange mixture of relief and satisfaction. I wasn't gloating, but I knew that she understood for the first time that she hadn't been in control the way she thought. Walking away from that conversation, I felt stronger than I had in years. I had faced her calmly, exposed the truth, and done it with dignity. For the first time, I didn't feel second best. Tessa had always overshadowed me, but now she realized that I had been planning, working, and quietly growing into my own power, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The day finally came when Mr. Hawthorne called me into his office. I could feel my heart racing, but I stayed calm. He looked at me seriously and told me that he had noticed all the work I had done on the project, the way I had handled problems, and how I had kept everything on track. He said I had earned more responsibility and from now on would be leading key parts of the project. Hearing those words, I felt a rush of relief and pride. After years of being overlooked, my efforts were finally recognized. Later, at a small celebration for the project's success, I found myself surrounded by co-workers and a few of Tessa's friends. I didn't boast or make it dramatic, but when the conversation turned to the project, I quietly mentioned the ways I had helped fix issues and keep everything on schedule. People listened, nodding and thanking me for my contributions. Tessa, standing nearby, shifted uncomfortably. Her confident smile faltered as she realized everyone was hearing the truth about my work. The feeling was strange but satisfying. I didn't need to embarrass her publicly or gloat. Just seeing her reaction, the small flicker of panic and disbelief, reminded me of the party when she had called me useless in front of everyone. The power dynamic had shifted completely. Now, I was the one respected, and she had to face the consequences of underestimating me for so long. Even as the celebration continued, I remained composed. I smiled politely at Tessa, who avoided looking at me, and continued talking to the team about the project. People were genuinely interested in my contributions, and that recognition felt more powerful than any dramatic confrontation could have been. For the first time, I felt the respect I had been denied for years. Tessa's embarrassment wasn't about one small mistake. It was about her whole pattern of underestimating me finally being exposed. I didn't need to remind anyone directly of her arrogance. It was obvious in the way she stiffened and avoided conversation. Meanwhile, I felt calm, satisfied, and quietly proud. I had proven my worth through action, patience, and careful planning, not through shouting or revenge. Walking out of the celebration, I felt lighter than I had in years. All the humiliation, all the times I had been dismissed or ignored, suddenly felt worth it. I hadn't just succeeded in the project. I had earned respect and recognition for myself, not as Tessa's sister, but as Cassidy Monroe. For the first time, I could stand tall without feeling second best. I knew that my work, my patience, and my determination had paid off. Tessa's laughter and arrogance no longer mattered. What mattered was that I had taken control of my story and finally, people could see my worth. I didn't need to gloat, but inside I felt vindicated. All the years of being overlooked had led to this moment, and it felt perfect. Sitting in her office, I looked back on everything that had happened and felt a strange calm. The humiliation I had endured for years, the jokes, the dismissals, the laughter at my expense, had all taught me something important. I realized that I had turned every insult into a lesson, every setback into motivation. What once felt like weakness had become strength, and I finally understood that I could use my patience, focus, and determination to take control of my own life. It wasn't revenge in the cruel sense. I hadn't set out to hurt Tessa for the sake of hurting her. Instead, I had sought justice in a quiet, careful way. I had wanted to show my worth, to let the truth come forward without me having to shout or embarrass anyone publicly. That made the victory feel different, cleaner, and more satisfying. It was about being recognized for my abilities, not about punishing her. As I looked across the office, Mr. Hawthorne was discussing plans for upcoming projects. I listened and offered ideas, suggesting ways to improve efficiency and solve potential problems. He nodded, clearly valuing my input, and I could feel the trust between us growing stronger. Tessa stood nearby, silent and tense, her confidence nowhere to be seen. She had watched everything unfold, realizing too late that she had underestimated me. For the first time, she was just another person in the room, and I was the one taking the lead. I felt a deep sense of relief. For so long, I had measured myself against Tessa, worried about her approval or disapproval, and felt small in comparison. But now, I didn't need anyone else to define me. I had earned my own place, separate from her shadow. My identity was no longer tied to being the lesser sister. I had proven to myself and others that I belonged. The experience taught me a powerful lesson. Even when people betray you or try to make you feel worthless, you can reclaim your dignity. Patience, strategy, and calm determination can turn moments of weakness into opportunities for growth. I had learned to wait for the right time, to observe carefully, and to act with precision. That approach had changed everything. As I left the office that day, I felt lighter than I had in years. The anger and hurt that had once weighed me down had been replaced with confidence and purpose. I knew I had grown stronger, wiser, and more self-assured. For the first time, I truly felt like I belonged in my own right. Tessa's laughter and cruelty no longer had power over me. I had taken control of my story, earned respect, and found my own identity. And in that quiet, steady way, I knew I had finally become the person I was always meant to be. Do you think Cassidy handled everything the right way by quietly taking control and proving herself? Or should she have confronted Tessa more openly from the start? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your opinion. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out.